Hi, I'm Dante Ferrigno, and this is Ferrigno Freedom Channel. For those of you returning, welcome back, and those of you who are new here, I just want to let you know I've been doing a carnivore way of eating known as the Lion Diet now for the past 3.5 years, and it has just been amazing what it has done for me. It has been able to cure a lot of problems I have with my gut and with my digestive system. It's been able to cure some allergies that I've had. It's changed so many things in my life, it's hard to even go over them all, every single video. So I encourage you to go back and check out some of my older videos that really give you an in-depth look at what the Lion Diet has been able to do for me and what it might be able to do for you too. But I'm not here to really talk about the carnivore diet so much today, as I do want to go over something in the news that I noticed that has to do with carnivores especially, and that is this America's Looming Cattle Crisis story that I saw in the Epic Times. Now, I haven't looked at the story yet, so we're going to be looking at this together, and we're going to take a look at it right now. America's beef cattle herds have fallen to their lowest levels in more than 70 years. And anybody who is on a carnivore way of eating who wants to make sure they have plenty of beef, that's a concerning statement right there. America's ranchers struggle to earn a living. Domestic cattle herds are shrinking to the lowest numbers in 70 years, and cattle farmers are exiting the business by the tens of thousands each year, leaving the United States ever more dependent on imports, agricultural analysts say. The new report from the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City highlights the plight of cattle farmers, stating that higher interest rates are now putting many of them into the red. And ranchers say that escalating loan expenses are just one of several factors driving them to sell off their herds, which may herald even higher beef prices for consumers in the years to come. It's hard to trust this thing, keeping herds or buying more, Kansas rancher Kyle Hermet told the Epic Times. Rather than borrow to invest in new herds, he said, many ranchers are opting to simply sell off their cattle. While cattle prices are currently at nominal highs for farmers, prices were also high in 2014, spurring many ranchers to borrow money and expand their herds in expectation of profitable years to come. What happened next, however, was a flood of imports from Mexico and Brazil that hit the market starting in 2015, driving down prices and putting many American farmers into the red, according to a report by Ohio State University. Well, my comment on that is that I have found that some people do love those Mexican imports, but whatever that beef is they're sending us from Mexico is not the quality of the beef that they eat in Mexico. I'm pretty sure of that. It's definitely not the quality of USDA choice beef or even select beef. A lot of times those beefs that are available at places like Save-A-Lot or even Winn-Dixie, when it says made in Mexico, if you ask them what grade is this meat, they're not going to know, because they don't have grades like prime and select and choice like we do here in America, which are basically your 3 consumer meat ratings. And I find choice to be perfect for me because it keeps the price where I want it to be and it keeps the quality where I want it to be. If I get down into select or lower, then I'm looking at quality meat that really is below quality for me to be able to enjoy. Prime is delicious. I mean, Wagyu beef is delicious too, but who can afford it? But I find a lot of those meats that come from Mexico that are ungraded are really tough, devoid of fat. Many times they can even claim to be grass-fed, but this is actually a very poor way of grass-feeding animals, where they're just letting the animals wander around in their pastures, but they're not keeping an eye on letting the grass get tall for them. They're not moving them from paddock to paddock so the grass can grow enough for them to have that high grass where the carbohydrates are up high in the grass and the cow's able to get fat from eating it. They're having to chomp the grass all the way down to the ground, and they wind up getting worms and all kind of things that come from not raising them right, and it really gives a bad name to grass-fed beef. My experience, if you get the right grass-fed beef, it can be fantastic. But that stuff that's coming out of Mexico for us here in the United States isn't that kind of beef. Ranchers talk of that time selling into a oversaturated market with prices plummeting as trying to catch a falling knife. With cattle prices now rising again, agricultural economists said that according to what is known as the cattle cycle, farmers would typically invest in expanding their herds at this point, but instead many ranchers are liquidating their herds and thousands are leaving the business altogether. They're liquidating because 1, long-term lack of profitability, 2, widespread drought, and 3, lending institutions just refusing to carry them any further because of the long history of depressed prices and losses. Bill Bullard, CEO of RCAF, told the Epic Times, RCAF is an organization of cattle farmers that calls itself the National Voice for Independent Cow-Calf Producers and Feeders across America. I just want to talk about that one sentence for a moment there, because that is where I have some issues with what they're saying about this. I don't think there's any doubt that there is a higher demand for beef and other meats right now because the carnivore diet has been spreading like it has been. That is going to bring prices up for a little while, but at some point these cattle ranchers are going to realize there is money to be made, and I think that the more we as carnivores continue to eat this way of living and find the health benefits that we found, it's going to keep that demand high enough to where it's going to be irresistible for certain farmers to stay in this realm. But when they talked about the investors, that gets back to what's going on in the pharma industry, is that it's the investors who are driving what's going on in the medicines that are being produced. They don't want cures. They want long-term, continuous care solutions that will keep bringing the money in. Well, the same thing with beef is they can say, well, you've got a rocky history, so we don't really want to invest a lot of money in this area. But I think part of that is politically driven too. When you've got people like Bill Gates out there pushing for his Beyond Burger and all that other nonsense that they want to make with digitally printed meats and lab-grown meats, that they want to be able to feed us this scientific lab garbage instead of actually eating natural, healthy meat from animals that are raised and designed to be fed upon. It's really bad when ideological principles get in the way of common sense in the world of nutrition and health. And that's exactly what we see going on right now. I hope that we can survive some of this insanity, and maybe more of us should be investing in some of these companies, us regular people investing in cattle ranchers who are trying to grow and trying to expand their ability. And at the very least, investing by buying the meat at the local ranch level, buying meat from local outlets where you can find ranchers who are willing to sell you beef direct to your family at places like usabeef.org, which is how I found the rancher where I buy whole cows from now. And then we support these ranchers and encourage them to want to take care of larger herds of animals. Then it is going to turn around. Vote with your dollars, people. That's the key right there. Vote with your dollars. If you don't want the big companies out there taking over everything, if you'd like to see more small business involved in this, if you want to see more local ranchers making beef that's affordable, you got to let them know that you're going to be supporting their business by actually buying as much of their product as you can. I know that's not going to be feasible for everyone, so don't get me wrong. Buy your store-bought meat if that's all you can afford. I have to buy store-bought meat. Even though I do get about 50% of my meat from a rancher, I get another 50% from the store because I can only get so many ribeyes from a cow. And then I got to eat a lot of burger. So I do tend to buy a lot of ribeyes on the side and other cuts of meat. And lately I've been buying a lot of lamb because lamb has gotten really affordable again. But we've got to support our local ranchers if we want to really see the industry be able to stay sustainable with all of the negative pressure we have coming from politicians and from people like Bill Gates who think about things like population control being something that we need to be trying to do and cutting down the number of people on the planet, using healthcare and vaccines to reduce the population. It doesn't sound like what healthcare and vaccines were designed to do. You would think it would help people to live longer, which would increase the population. But if their goal is to use healthcare and vaccines to reduce the population, what are they doing to the healthcare and vaccines that are going to do that? So if we want to push back against some of this nonsense that comes from these billionaires that have all these designs on what they're going to do in this world, we're going to have to spend our money at the local ranch level. Once a rancher liquidates, there is a high likelihood that they won't get back into ranching. Another reason to support your local ranchers. There's a loss rate of over 20,000 ranchers per year for the past 5 years. And you add that to the fact that we've lost 655,000 beef cattle operations just in the last 4 decades since 1980. That's a lot. Well, hopefully they're replacing some of them. No relief on beef prices. Darn it. Consumers have already seen beef prices skyrocket since 2020 and will likely see more of that in the months to come. The average price of ground beef rose from about $3.80 per pound in 2020 to $5.50 per pound as of June this year, according to data from the St. Louis Fed. And that's one of the reasons I don't buy a lot of ground beef, because it's way overpriced, in my opinion. And a January market report by William Secor and Benjamin Campbell, agriculture economists at the University of Georgia, predicts that beef prices will continue to rise through 2024. If we look at the data that we have, it's likely we're going to have tighter supplies going forward, which suggests that prices are going to remain elevated for the next several months, Secor told the Epoch Times. The general cycle is that when we start to tighten up these supplies, there's a point where we want to start rebuilding. We retain some of those cattle that would normally be going through the supply chain just to keep normal levels of inventory. In the near term, this stage of the cattle cycle would drive prices higher as farmers hold back cattle for breeding rather than sending them off to slaughter. But over the longer term, higher prices would result in larger herds, which would eventually bring prices back down, Secor said. And that's exactly what I've been talking about when I keep telling people that the carnivore way of eating and spreading this information is going to cause the prices to eventually come down. That demand will create supply, because when there's money to be made, the cattle ranchers will come and make that money. Maybe not the ones who left, but maybe some new ones, especially ones who are learning about the benefits of a carnivore way of eating and who are learning about the benefits of properly done regenerative farming and practices that allow us to have healthy animals, even eating a mostly grass diet. Now, I know that's not going to be the case across the board, because you got cattle being raised in areas where grass doesn't grow year round, so they have to supplement them with something. But the idea is that not only will we get more cattle ranchers, but we'll bring prices down, and we'll probably get better beef in the long run if we keep spreading the news about carnivore. However, America's farmers thus far do not appear to be rebuilding their herds. More cattle continue to be sold off in the beef supply chain, the Fed report stated. Also, inventories for beef cows and heifers continue to decline, signaling that market and financial conditions have been more conducive to selling heifers and cows than retaining them. You know, that could have something to do with the fact that more people are eating beef now because of the carnivore way of eating. So they're actually having to sell more because there's more demand. I'm hoping to see them replace those numbers, though. When this wave of selling passes, depleted inventories could result in even greater shortages and additional spikes in the cost of beef, likely increasing America's dependence on beef imports. A 2023 report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture stated that imports are forecast to increase through 2024 as domestic beef production declines. Again, that sounds like something that's built into the system that they want. I don't trust a lot of these numbers coming out of our Department of Ag. While the United States is still the world's largest producer of beef, it has also become a net beef importer. Imports have typically been lower grade frozen meats for blending into ground beef, shipped from Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, the report states. More recently, however, imports of higher quality fresh cuts from Canada and Mexico have also increased. American ranchers successfully lobbied in 2002 to get mandatory country of origin labels placed on beef packaging. However, foreign beef producers filed suit with the World Trade Organization, and the United States repealed country of origin labeling in 2016 for beef and pork, though it remains in effect for lamb, chicken, and goat meat, and other perishable agricultural commodities. Interest costs can eat you up. Competition from imports has added pressure on prices and profit margins for American ranchers, and recent interest rate hikes have now put many ranchers into the red. Over the past decade, cattle producers had opportunities for positive profit margins nearly every year, the report from the Kansas City Fed states. However, so far in 2024, the range of prices has stayed below the cost of production. Well, there's no doubt the increased interest rate on borrowing money is going to affect them just like it affects the housing market and other things. I wonder if there was a time in the near past where we had like 3% interest rates. If we could get back to that, wouldn't that be nice? We'd have to have the economy to support such a thing. I wonder what caused that change. Let me know what you think in the comments. While normal prices for beef this year are the highest in a decade, farmers' costs are also at historical highs. When higher interest expenses are added in, there is often no profit left for ranchers. It's pretty detrimental to a young guy that's trying to expand or first-time ranchers trying to get into the cattle business, Hermet said. Interest rates can eat you up. Raising cattle is unique among animal farming due to the length of time required for cows to reach maturity and to become marketable, all of which must be financed, often through operating credit lines from the banks. And during this time when there is no income, there are expenses for land, equipment, veterinary services, vaccinations, fuel, and feed. And this is another area where I kind of take a little umbrage with that, because after talking to Jeff over at Big Mo Cattle, I realized that they don't spend nearly as much on veterinary services and vaccinations and even feed or fuel because they move their cattle properly. They raise them regeneratively. They actually make sure that they're moving from paddock to paddock at least once a day, if not twice a day, and they don't return to the same paddock again for 45 days. So by the time they get back, they got nice tall grass to eat that keeps the animals healthy. They use the pigs and the chickens to come through those paddocks once the cows leave to spread around all the manure and to get out all the bugs. Naturally, he doesn't have to spend as much money on keeping his animals healthy because his animals stay healthy because of their natural diet, by keeping them eating the right kind of things and not putting Roundup out there to get rid of the stuff they want to get rid of. And he's able to make a profit, even with a small business that he has. He doesn't even have a website, and he's able to provide for his family and then some with what he does there. The article goes on to say, I think it would be hard for someone not involved in agriculture to understand how much money we flow through, South Dakota rancher Brett Kinsey told the Epic Times. The joke is borrowing millions to make thousands. I can agree, that would bother me too. But I think there are ways that you can do it where it takes a little bit more time and effort, but a lot less money and expense if it's done the right way. We're used to operating on a real tight profit margin. And then when interest goes up like this, that can erode all of that margin, Kinsey said. The Fed report says that America's cattle herds have now fallen to their lowest levels in more than 70 years. While ranchers are taking advantage of short-term opportunity to improve cash flow by selling off cattle, the longer-term problem is that with smaller herds, they are less able to make a living even in years when prices are good. An additional concern for ranchers is that consumers shift their buying habits as beef becomes less affordable. And that's certainly the case with a lot of people that want to worry about the cost of beef. It's one of the things that I have somehow been able to avoid because one thing is I know I'm going to keep eating meat. So I look for the best prices on the meat that I can get, but I'm not changing my amount of consumption. If anything, I'm increasing it because as my family moves more and more in a carnivore way of eating, I'm having to get meat for them now too, a lot more than I used to in the past. And I'm not making more money than I did the years before. I'm going through the same inflationary nonsense that everyone else is, but I'm not spending as much on doctor visits. I'm not spending as much on medicine. I'm not spending as much on supplements. I'm not spending as much on convenience foods, things that I used to spend at convenience stores where you're paying 4 and 5 times what you would pay for the same garbage that you buy in the grocery store that's causing you to be sick, fat, and unhealthy. So when you start cutting all that junk out, you make room for stuff like this. But I would still like to see the prices of meats come down to the level that they should be at when we're not dealing with a poor economy and high inflation like we have been for at least 3.5 years. Again, what could be causing that? It's almost like somebody has it in their head that if we can drive the prices of meat up, we can get people to stop eating it. Tell me what you think in the comments. The risk is that if consumers don't feel quite as confident in their purchasing power going forward, they might start to look at cheaper sources of protein, Secor said. That might mean for some consumers shifting within the beef segment, maybe moving from steaks to burgers, but it could also mean shifting out of beef altogether. Aside from rising interest costs, ranchers in Texas and Oklahoma were hit by wildfires in March, which are estimated to have killed thousands of cattle alongside other damage. Drought conditions impacted many farmers' regions from 2020 through 2022. Now, when you start talking about wildfires and drought, that's been going on all along. It's not like this is a new thing that just happened between 2020 and 2022. These are always issues that people have to deal with. And there is no guarantee of getting a full return, no matter what business model you're in. So some of this doom and gloom is overstated because it's naturally in the process. It's all this unnatural manipulation of the market that's going on that are causing the major problems, in my opinion. Many market watchers say the consolidation of food production into an ever smaller number of farmers and meat processors, coupled with an increasing dependence on imports, creates food security risks for the United States. We have such a frail market system now, as we saw in COVID. It doesn't take much of a wrench thrown into the gears to collapse everything, Kinsey said. When we had widespread family agriculture and a lot of producers spread across the country, we had a pretty resilient system where if one area went down, the other area can pick up the slack. But now we have leaned so far into efficiency that any hiccup can really have catastrophic effects on food availability. And that's where the problem is. I personally think it's by design, by people in positions of power that have a lot of money, that have a lot of interest in keeping people hooked on the pharmaceutical industry, hooked on the ultra-processed food industry, and using the money that they make off of these things to influence government officials to make into law the things that they want to keep that money rolling in, are the main problem we're dealing with when it comes to having affordable meat available in our country or in other countries. And in the United States, as bad as the prices are, they're a lot better than prices I've seen from a lot of my viewers in other countries. I can't even understand how we have allowed it to get this far, where the people that we've voted into positions of power and authority are allowing the bureaucracy to control things to such a way that they're not actually doing anything. So when we replace these politicians, we still have the same bureaucratic machine in place that's doing the bidding of basically the World Economic Forum, that wants to see population reduced, that wants to see less regular people breathing their air and eating their food. It's the kind of thing that brings me to really want to pray about the things that are going on out there. Because what I see coming out of the World Economic Forum is a plan for genocide, and I don't like it at all. And I don't like seeing what's happening to our meat industry. And I'm hoping that as we continue to spread the word about carnivore and the benefits that come from it, we'll see a turnaround on some of these prices. And we can get back to good free market principles. We can see the market respond to this and rebound from the damage that has been done from all of these COVID restrictions and all these crazy ideas that we have adjusted our economy to for this manufactured crisis. Well, that's what I think anyway. Tell me what you think in the comments, and be sure to check out ferrignofreedom.com for more information on a carnivore way of eating, for opportunities to tell me your story and be on my channel telling your story in a carnivore conversation. Or if you need some coaching on your carnivore way of eating, there are opportunities for that there. And any of the products that I use to cook my meat, or that salts that I use, or anything like that, is all available on the website ferrignofreedom.com. I hope you'll check it out, and I'll see you guys next time.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?